Hello, it is the 2nd of September. I received my developmental edits 3 days ago on the Monday. Today's Thursday. I have my developmental edits right here, and it's a 13-page document. This is the editorial letter from my editor Kelly. Kelly, thank you so much. Your words, your edits have actually helped me more than I think you all know. Kelly has a YouTube channel here on YouTube. I didn't sleep last night, can you tell? So I'll have her linked below. Kelly is an amazing editor. She's just starting up her editing business. So if any of you are looking for some developmental edits for your own novels or non-fiction, get in touch. Honestly, this has warmed my heart. This has kicked me up the butt to get these final edits in. So I'm really excited. I'm gonna go over the entire thing. It's 13 pages. I'm focusing just on structure because she's also pointed out things to do with tone, voice, consistency, character, plot, etc. I'm about to read. I'll update you when I do that, yeah? All right. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I'm doing this so that I can clarify any questions I have about her feedback quickly, because I want the book to still be on her mind, and so I can just reach out to her this week and just be like, oh, can I clarify? So I think there are a couple of things when I first read it I was like, wait, what does that mean? Or am I understanding this right? Is this what you're suggesting that I do? So just for me, literally just to clarify and make sure that I get the most out of these edits and I can implement the feedback that she's given me. So something that she brought up, which has been really useful, and I'm very glad she did, and I wanted it, but I don't think I asked her specifically for it, but subconsciously I was hoping she would bring that, is that she made notes throughout the manuscript of UK specific terms. So things where she was like, I actually don't know what this means, because she's not British, she's Canadian. And so that was really interesting to me, because it is something that I did consider, I think maybe even before I started writing, or maybe I think during the writing of the book as some things came up. And I kind of decided not to explain those terms because, and again, this is a personal thing, so as a reader I read and I watch a lot of American literature and a lot of American entertainment on TV. I have become accustomed to American ways of saying things, to American English, and so I guess I just assumed that like they don't change things for me, so I don't need to be over palatable to anyone who's not from the UK, because via context you'll begin to understand what I'm talking about. Having said that, there are some things that are very useful, because as much American literature that I read and American television I watch, I still do not understand their high school system. Like when you say elementary school, they have other terms. There's other terms, I can't even think about it, but like elementary. I know grad school, for example, now is grad school is like what we would call a master's, but things like that, they have different terms and I don't fully understand them. And there's more specific things like their references to temperature, for example. I don't fully understand. I just use the context to kind of guesstimate what's going on. She brought up some of those points where she was like, I actually don't know what this means, which means that I don't know what age you are when you're talking about this, and that is quite important. So I'm thinking of a way to maybe explain that without info dumping. And do I need to explain it? Because at first I thought, oh, it doesn't really matter. But the more I'm thinking about it, maybe it matters, or maybe it matters in some cases and not in other cases. What do you guys think? Or will people pick it up via context? How much does it matter if people are a little bit lost? Because the nice thing about having everything UK specific is that it is me, it is honest, it is like me writing this book is going to be very different if I was an American writing this book, or a Canadian writing this book, or from anywhere else writing this book, right? The same way I wouldn't expect, if I'm reading a book by a Swedish author, I would expect Swedish references in there, and this is a stylistic thing, I quite like it when sometimes in books specific references aren't explained, because I'm like, that's on me. But that's because I come from England, and because so many things cater to us as English people. Our language, our references, everything, so much caters to a Eurocentric point of view. So I love reading books and they'll use words that I don't understand because they're not English words, but I love it when they just don't explain it and they don't even italicize it, because I'm like, yeah, that's your culture. I'm the one that's on the outside here. But is that useful for this? This is not a fiction book. I don't know. It's something I'm thinking about. If you have thoughts on that, please comment that down below. Please let me know. I'm currently, as of yet, undecided. I think I might just go through every single reference and see what I think for each one. See where I can put in more context clues or where I don't think it's necessary. I guess it's just I get to make a choice on this, right? I don't think there's a right or wrong. It's a stylistic thing. Okay, we're done. We've been through it. This has been helpful, and I feel like, to be honest, the changes are going to be very simple in terms of the direction in which the edits I need to make are very clear. Her feedback is very detailed, it's very useful. And yeah, so we're just going to go through and do big structural edits. The main things, honestly, are adding chapters, which I've tried not to do. It's almost like I have been so conscious of a reader's time and interest that I've really tried to pare the book down. And what she is saying is like, no, we actually want to know that detail. Can you tell us that detail? And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. Logically, it makes sense for me that readers would want to know those details, but for some reason, so there's certain parts where I haven't really wrapped up, or I've introduced a person and then like not told you what happened to them, and that's important as well, because I set them up so nicely and I talk about my relationship with that person, and then it's like they just disappear, and it's not intentional. It's just, I just didn't really, I shouldn't have done that really. I think it's just a case of, I'm aware of the length of the memoir, and I'm aware that it's long, and I feel like it's longer than other memoirs, and so I'm trying to like pare things down to the bare minimum, but then what that is doing is robbing the reader of the joy of actually completing narrative arcs, which I don't want that to happen. So I have to go back and write these chapters, that's fine. And then another thing is that something that I've just been thinking about a lot in terms of just making it very clear in the narrative where I am in that situation in my life, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I just have to fix it. So those are the main things. So I went through and highlighted loads. There's literally an entire page that's just highlights, but that's because that section is on structure. And some other thoughts that I had, and I didn't have any questions this time. So to be fair, last time I read through this, it was like 4 in the morning. It's really good to know that the reader is invested enough to care about every single narrative arc, and it just relaxes me, which means I can take my time with the story instead of trying to rush it so much, which is where you get the telling and not the showing from, which is just not what we want to do. Another thing I really want to do is literally map out my story according to Freytag's pyramid. Editing Nikki coming in real quick to say that I mapped out the story according to Freytag's pyramid, and the point of the story, which should have been the midpoint, which should have been the climax of the story, fell pretty much perfectly on the halfway point of the memoir. I'm so happy. I am so happy because I didn't plot it out according to that before, and I was so concerned that I'd done it far too early, and I was like, oh my gosh, rhythmically is this completely off? It was perfect. I was so happy. I was like, you know what? I think, yeah, like it just felt like there was an intuitive sense of storytelling and the rhythm that and the pacing that the story needed. So I'm so happy about that. But yeah, back to the video. If you haven't seen Freytag's pyramid, it's the exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, denouement. That is very useful, and I teach it all the time, and I want to plot my memoir against that because I think it'll be really useful in identifying. She's identified the midpoint here, and I'm like, that is the midpoint. It is the climax. However, it doesn't come at the point in the story where I think a climax should arrive. I feel like it arrives earlier. So I'm like, I just want to plot every single event against Freytag's pyramid and see if it fits, because even though it's a memoir and not fiction, it's still the thing. I've also learned so much about voice, because my goodness, I use past tense, present tense, close present, close past, freaking like the narrative voice in this. Like there's so many different tenses, and I seem to have used more than I wanted to use. So I need to go through and just be very specific about when I want to use a tense. Like I'll read you a comment from here and you will understand how many tenses I use, right? Are you telling this to readers as your present self narrator, or are you telling this to readers as a thought in which you are reflecting in that past moment? I would think that in the past timeline there would be no references to your current self, because I'm reading your past like a narrative story in which your current self is not present. If your current self is inserted into this past story, this would be a little jarring for readers to be pulled out of the moment. this makes perfect sense to me. The book is actually not that complicated. It's just that my tenses is where I have messed up the most. It's the biggest mistake I've made in writing this draft. So we need to fix that. And I was aware of it. I was so aware of it. I don't think I was aware of how much I switch tenses, and that's not something I usually do. It's because I'm trying to balance all these different authorial voices and all these different timelines. And again, it sounds more complicated than it is. When you read it, you'll be like, oh, okay, cool. In fact, when you read it, you probably won't get what I'm talking about because I'll have fixed it by then. But the mistakes I've made are just annoying. They're annoying, so I need to fix them. And then by the time you read it, you won't have to worry about that at all.